Natalie Wood's name still carries weight in Hollywood. She grew up in front of the camera, starting as a child star in Miracle on 34th Street, breaking hearts in Rebel Without a Cause, and cementing her place in movie history with West Side Story. She was a star who had everything: beauty, talent, recognition, and a long career that made her one of the most bankable actresses of her generation. But when she died at only 43, it wasn't just a tragedy. It became one of Hollywood's most enduring mysteries. The setting was Thanksgiving weekend, 1981. Natalie was spending the holiday on her 60-foot yacht, Splendor, anchored near Catalina Island. Her companions were her husband, actor Robert Wagner, with whom she'd had a famously passionate and sometimes turbulent marriage, actor Christopher Walken, who was co-starring with her in the science fiction film Brainstorm, and Dennis Davern, the yacht's captain. For outsiders, it might have seemed like a great getaway, friends, food, and time away from the spotlight. Instead, it turned into a night that still raises more questions than it answers. On the night of November 28th, tensions on board were already simmering. Walken and Wagner reportedly got into a heated argument. Whether about Natalie, her career, or other personal issues has never been fully agreed upon. According to later accounts, voices were raised, wine glasses were broken, and the mood shifted. Natalie, who had always been known for her fear of dark, open water, reportedly left the cabin sometime after midnight. What happened next is unclear. At around 1:30 a.m., Wagner and Davern called for help over the radio. Natalie was missing, along with the yacht's small inflatable dinghy, the Valiant. A search began immediately. Hours later, at around 7:30 a.m., her body was found about a mile from the yacht, floating face down in the water. She was dressed in a flannel nightgown, blue wool socks, and a red down jacket. The dinghy was discovered beached nearby, with the ignition turned off and the oars stowed away. The autopsy suggested that Natalie had died by drowning and hypothermia. Her blood alcohol level was measured at 0.12%, which is above the legal driving limit. The coroner, Dr. Thomas Noguchi, also found superficial bruises on her arms and legs and a small abrasion on her cheek. He ruled that she had likely slipped and fallen into the water, perhaps while trying to secure the dinghy. Her heavy jacket, waterlogged, would have made it nearly impossible to climb back in. The official ruling was accidental drowning, but the details never sat right with many people. Natalie had a well-known fear of deep water, going back to a childhood accident. Friends said she never would have taken the dinghy out by herself, especially not at night, and especially not while drinking. There was no glass of water or cup in her room, unusual for someone who would have swallowed a handful of pills or drunk heavily before bed. And why was the dinghy found secured and untouched, as if no one had tried to start it? Adding to the questions were inconsistencies in the stories told by those on board. In 1981, Wagner said Natalie had likely gone out to fix the dinghy, which had been banging against the yacht. He insisted it was an accident. Walken, who gave only limited statements, supported that view. The captain, Dennis Davern, originally backed Wagner's version, but decades later, he admitted he had lied. In 2011, Davern said Wagner had fought with Natalie that night, and that Wagner had delayed turning on searchlights or calling for help once he realized she was missing. His later account suggested Wagner may have been directly involved, though he never provided definitive proof. The bruises also took on new weight. In 2012, the Los Angeles County Coroner's Office changed Natalie's death certificate from accidental drowning to drowning and other undetermined factors. Officials noted that the bruises could have come from a fall, or they could have been consistent with an altercation before she entered the water. The amendment didn't accuse anyone of wrongdoing, but it admitted that the evidence was murkier than originally believed. In 2018, the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department officially named Robert Wagner a person of interest. Detectives said his account of the night had changed over time and that his behavior after Natalie disappeared didn't match the urgency of a husband who had just lost his wife. Wagner has always denied involvement. He has said in interviews that he loved Natalie deeply, that her death was a terrible accident, and that any suspicions about him are misplaced. To this day, he has never been charged with any crime. Christopher Walken, now in his 80s, has largely avoided speaking publicly about the case. When asked in a 1997 interview, he simply said, "She slipped and drowned in the water," That's all. There's nothing more to it. He has not expanded on that view since. What remains is a web of contradictions. Natalie was afraid of water, yet she was found in it. She was supposedly trying to secure a dinghy, yet the dinghy appeared unused. She had bruises, yet none conclusive enough to prove foul play. The three men who could provide answers gave conflicting or shifting accounts, and nearly every new revelation since 1981 has raised more questions than it answered. The mystery has never really gone away. Books, documentaries, and even podcasts revisit the case every few years. Suzanne Finstad's biography of Wood argued strongly that her death was not an accident. HBO's 2020 documentary Natalie Wood, What Remains Behind, took a more intimate, family-focused approach, giving Wagner a platform to defend himself while her daughters remembered their mother. In 2022, investigators said all leads had been exhausted and the case was dormant, though technically still open. For the people of Catalina Island, the memory of that weekend lingers too. Locals still remember the panic in the small town of Two Harbors as news spread. The sight of search boats, helicopters, and divers scouring the water remains part of the island's collective memory. For many, Natalie Wood's death transformed Catalina forever, from a quiet getaway to a place haunted by unanswered questions. The impact extends beyond the island. Natalie Wood's story has become a kind of symbol for the darker side of Hollywood. A star beloved by millions dies suddenly, under mysterious circumstances, in a setting that should have been safe. It reminds us that fame, beauty, and success don't shield anyone from tragedy, and that sometimes the truth doesn't come clean, no matter how many decades pass. Today, Natalie is remembered not just for the way she died, but for the life she lived. She was a gifted actress who grew up on screen and delivered performances that still resonate. She was also a daughter, a sister, a mother, and a wife. Her legacy is more than mystery. It's the warmth she brought to the screen and the enduring sense of loss at how suddenly it was taken away. Still, the unanswered questions are part of what keeps her story alive. Did she slip? Did she fall? Was there more to that final argument than anyone admitted? We may never know. What we do know is that one of Hollywood's brightest stars ended her journey not under the spotlights of a studio set, but in the dark waters off Catalina Island. And because those questions remain, Natalie Wood's final night at sea continues to cast a shadow over Los Angeles history.